Crota's End is the featured raid of the Dark Below expansion in Destiny 1, brought over to Destiny 2 during the Season of the Witch in 2023. While its original form was infamously straightforward, this reprised version makes a number of changes and introduces an entirely new mechanic that will test your fireteam's coordination throughout. For this video, I'll be covering both the basic mechanics for each encounter, as well as the strategies for completing each encounter challenge. So this video will have a little something for beginners and raid veterans looking for some extra loot. Feel free to use timestamps and chapters to view the sections most relevant to you. Without further ado, let's get started. The Chalice of Light is a buff that must be held by one player at a time. While holding the chalice, a meter on the left side of the screen will slowly fill. Killing enemies fills this meter faster. Once the meter is full, a 10-second overflowing chalice debuff will commence. Another player must take the chalice before that timer runs out and kills the player. Having the chalice taken after the meter fills will grant the Enlightened buff, which is used to interact with certain encounter elements or pick up hive swords. Taking the chalice from another player before the meter fills will not grant them enlightenment, so timing is key. Losing the chalice early or using enlightenment will then trigger a 45-second drained of light debuff, preventing the player from taking the chalice again for the duration. For each encounter, establish a set order for all players to follow and pass the chalice around in that order. Master this rotation of moving the chalice around, and this raid shouldn't give you too much trouble. This area basically serves as a tutorial for using the chalice. Simply pass the chalice around and use enlightenment to power up the plate. Once the plate has been powered up enough, a bridge will be built going over the Hellmouth. Go across and then enter the Column of Light to sink to the bottom of the Hellmouth into the abyss. Before even starting the first encounter, hook a left and follow the wall around the corner to the left. You'll probably need an eager edge sword for this unless someone volunteers to refresh the timer using the chalice. At the end of the path is a door that contains a chest inside. After you loot the chest, you'll probably have to wipe to start the encounter for real, but that's okay. For this encounter, equip for mobility, add clear, and unstoppable champions. Swords, especially with Eager Edge, can be quite useful here. Once you're ready to begin, pick up the chalice and start running to the nearest lantern. This encounter is essentially a marathon of running through the dark. As a fire team, move from lantern to lantern, avoiding holes, thralls, and spiked pendulum traps along the way. All players will gradually gain stacks of Weight of Darkness, reducing mobility until the max of 10 is reached, which completely removes the ability to sprint. Darkness stacks can be removed by using Enlightenment on lanterns, which will activate them and remove stacks from all nearby players. Be careful though, as lanterns will explode several seconds after being activated. Once it turns orange, run away. Additionally, some lanterns will have a podium nearby that the chalice must be preserved in to progress the encounter. You'll know you missed a podium if upcoming lanterns look much dimmer than usual. Finally, a timer shared by all players at the top of the screen will wipe the fire team if it reaches 0. The timer will reset every time either the chalice is preserved in a podium or a lantern is activated with enlightenment. Once you reach the end, preserve the chalice in the podium and then pick it back up. Pass the chalice around and use enlightenment on the plate to slowly capture it. Meanwhile, fend off unstoppable ogres and survive. Once the plate is captured, a bridge will form. Cross it and go through the next area to complete the encounter. No chest spawns for this encounter, but you should still get rewards either in your inventory or delivered straight to your postmaster. The challenge for this encounter is that lanterns can only be enlightened after the chalice has been preserved in a podium. Despite this being the de facto description of the challenge seen online, it's actually not entirely accurate. How it really works is that each time you preserve the chalice, you are allowed to enlighten a single lantern. You don't have to enlighten a lantern immediately after preserving it. You don't even have to enlighten a lantern before your next preserve. Think of it like this. Preserving the chalice grants you 1 lantern activation. Enlightening a lantern expends that. Therefore, you can theoretically preserve the chalice without enlightening 3 times in a row, then enlighten 3 lanterns in a row, and it will still fulfill the challenge. As for how to actually do this, there are a number of ways, some involving some cheese methods like Strand. Not counting the podium you initially pick up the chalice from, there are 6 total podiums that will appear throughout the encounter. The first and last ones will be at the first lantern and the plate respectively, but the remaining podiums are randomized in where they spawn. This incredible 3D map made by users Dame and Rastesaurus shows every lantern spot along the path and where every podium can spawn. You also don't have to preserve in every podium available, but it would probably be a good idea to, since you aren't going to be able to reset the timer as often. Keep in mind that enlightened players cannot take the chalice, so it may be a good idea to only have 1 or 2 players enlightened at a time, while the remaining pass the chalice before the meter fills to avoid enlightenment. Once the chalice is preserved in the final podium and the plate charging begins, the challenge is complete. Enlightening the plate does not count towards failing the challenge. Keep track of how often you've preserved, and keep up a good pace along the path, and the challenge is yours. For this encounter, equip for survivability and barrier champions. Pick up the chalice to begin. First, build the bridge. Have 1 player stand on the middle plate, while 2 other players stand underneath the death totems on the left and right. If any player stands on the center plate without anyone under both death totems for long enough, the fire team will wipe. Pass the chalice and use enlightenment on the center plate to build the bridge. Once it is fully built, continue passing the chalice until 5 players are enlightened. Meanwhile, a sword-bearer knight will spawn somewhere on the map. Have 1 enlightened player kill the knight and pick up its hive sword. Picking up a hive sword requires enlightenment and will consume it once you do, so don't drop it. Once at least 1 player has a sword and everyone else is either enlightened or carrying the chalice, send both the sword wielder and the chalice holder across the bridge. Attempting to cross without a sword or the chalice will kill you. On the other side, preserve the chalice in the back podium. The sword wielder will have to kill a shielded knight and then deposit their sword in one of the 5 podiums around the middle. Meanwhile, players still on the starting side should continue hunting for sword-bearer knights and grabbing hive swords whenever possible. Send players across the bridge one at a time once they have a sword. Once 3 players are on the other side, now they can stand on their center plate and underneath their totems to keep the bridge built, allowing the players on the starting side to step off and cross when ready. After all players have crossed the bridge and all 5 swords have been dunked, pick up the chalice again. Pass it around to enlighten players once more, then pick up the hive swords to kill another wave of shielded knights. Once this wave is dead and the swords are dunked again, the encounter is over. Collect your rewards from the chest at the back. The challenge for this encounter is that no players can stand on either of the middle plates while a player is crossing the bridge. Standing off of a plate risks collapsing the bridge if too many enemies step on it. When any player is ready to cross, wait for the brief periods between spawn waves to cross so that there's less enemies to worry about. Other players must kill all adds and keep them off the plate until the player is across. Once all players have crossed the bridge, you are effectively done with this challenge. During this intermission, all you have to do is pass the chalice and use enlightenment to cross the barriers. Once the Shriekers on the other sides of the barriers are killed, the barrier will fall for all players to pass. Respawning is restricted for this encounter, so you can technically wipe, but there's no hard timer or anything. The second secret chest is tied to the mini encounter intermission after the bridge. All you have to do is go as fast as possible and enter this final room before the door closes, and you should be awarded with an extra chest. It can be a little buggy though, fair warning. For this encounter, equip for DPS. Just about anything goes. Let's review the area. There's 1 large area in the center, as well as 7 circular rooms around the edge, 3 at the front on the upper level, and 4 at the back, with 2 stacked on top of each other on either side. Use whatever callout system works best for you and your fire team to refer to each of these 7 rooms. Once you're ready to begin, simply enter the main area. First, head to the lower level at the front. Split up to have 3 people on the left and 3 people on the right. Kill adds, especially any wizards or knights, until the Shriekers open up. Kill the Shriekers to open the force field and pick up the chalice. While passing the chalice around to get players enlightened, have at least 1 player run by all 7 rooms to check for wizards. Stand near the force field doors and look inside. If you see a wizard, call it out. If you see a Shrieker instead, ignore it and move on. If you can't see anything, look at your radar. A big dot with an arrow indicates a Shrieker, while a smaller dot indicates a wizard. Once 3 wizard rooms have been found, send enlightened players into them. Enlightenment allows you to pass through the force field doors, but will consume it once you do. As soon as 3 players are in rooms with wizards, kill all 3 wizards at the same time to begin DPS. Iryut will begin her death song even after a single wizard is killed, or after enough time has passed, but will only become vulnerable once all wizards are killed. Deal damage to the boss until the timer runs out. Optionally, any player that is still enlightened may expunge their buff on the boss to deal extra damage. Once the timer reaches 0, if enough damage was dealt to Iryut, the mechanic cycle repeats. This time, however, there will be 4 wizards in rooms that must be killed to start the damage phase, and on the cycle after that, 5 wizards. It is therefore imperative that you do as much damage as possible during the first phase, if not outright defeat her in that one phase, as the encounter gets considerably harder on each consecutive phase. Once Eriud's health bar depletes, she will die and the encounter is over. Collect your rewards from the chest nearby. For this encounter, the challenge is to simply pass the chalice in the exact same order for the entire encounter. That is all. If you follow my advice from earlier and establish a set rotation for all players and stick to it, then this challenge shouldn't really be much of an issue. Make sure to get rid of enlightenment, either by going into the rooms or expunging on the boss so that you can grab the chalice again. For this encounter, equip your highest damaging sword. If possible, have one player use an ergosum with wolfpack rounds. Otherwise, have someone use tractor cannon. Everyone stand by the crystal at the front on the lower level to summon Crota and begin. Grab the chalice from the center pit area. Have 2 players stand by the upper left and right rooms by the back. If possible, have another player stand by the middle room at the front to distract Crota. The presence of Crota debuff will prevent players from passing the chalice. When you get ready to pass, have both players stand inside the pool of light that spawns in one of 5 locations around the area. This is the only way to pass the chalice during this encounter. Meanwhile, the 2 players on the left and right must kill the Boomer Knights as they spawn. Once they die, a Swordbearer Knight, as well as some Ogres, will spawn in the pit. Use Enlightenment to grab a Hive Sword, and then use it to attack Crota and damage his shield. Perform the combo Light Attack, Heavy Attack, Super with the Hive Sword to destroy over half of Crota's shield in a single rotation. Once Crota's shield is fully depleted, he will kneel down and the damage phase begins. Ensure at least one other player is still enlightened by the time damage begins. The chalice can optionally be preserved in the podium near where the area was entered before the previous encounter. Damage Crota together using your swords. He will eventually stand up and start fighting back, so be careful. Meanwhile, Crota's Oversoul at the back of the map will expand to an incredible size, and a timer will appear at the top of the screen that will wipe the fire team if it reaches 0. Have a player with Enlightenment shoot the Oversoul when the timer is very low to stop the timer and end the damage phase. It takes a good amount of damage to break the expanded Oversoul, so be wary of the risk. Once the Oversoul is broken and DPS ends, the mechanic cycle repeats. Upon reaching final stand, Crota will go immune for a moment and the Oversoul timer will reset on its own. Damage Crota and break the Oversoul one more time before the timer runs out. The Oversoul will activate a final time, and this time it cannot be stopped. Simply kill Crota before the timer runs out to finish the raid. Collect your rewards and the Husk of the Pit, if you don't already have it, from the sword at the back. The challenge for Crota is to break his entire shield all at once. Hive swords have infinite ammo and will not expire once picked up. The strategy, therefore, is to have players pick up swords and hold on to them. You can feel free to help kill ads with the swords in the meantime, as long as you don't attack Crota. Once you have at least 3 players with swords, or 2 players that feel confident executing the combo I mentioned earlier, attack Crota at the same time to bring his shield from 100 to 0 in one rotation. Do this for every mechanic cycle to complete the challenge. At the start of the raid, before jumping down the shaft into the abyss, look out at the cliffs around the Hellmouth. There will be 3 pairs of statues, each with a single statue in that pair glowing with green fire. Throughout the raid are 3 corresponding pairs of statues. 2 pairs are in the bridge encounter, one on the starting side and one on the ending side, and the final pair is accessible in the final area before summoning Crota. Interact with and activate the correct statues in each pair to complete the puzzle, earning an additional chest after beating Crota with a guaranteed red border weapon. Activating an incorrect statue will fail the puzzle and force you to restart the raid to try again. Thanks for watching. If this guide helped you, please leave a like, and if you have any thoughts and concerns, don't be afraid to leave a comment. I'm Nova Starkyle, and I'll see you next time.